I'm Monica Petrelli, editor of CNBC Travel, and I'm joined today by the Academy Award winning actor and director, Kevin Costner. Kevin, it is a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you.
So, we're here to talk about the new road trip app called Here Here, which you co founded and which launched last August. Now, as you know, it's been a tumultuous couple of years for the travel industry. Did you have any concerns about launching a travel app during the pandemic?
Well, I've been a part of 3 or 4 startups in my life, and it's always a struggle. You don't anticipate, half the things that come at you. You just know it's going to be a struggle. It's always a miracle when a good idea actually even gets to where it wants to be. And I just started with the fundamental idea that I thought this was a really good idea. I felt it was in the wheelhouse of what I already do in terms of storytelling and my kind of love of history. And so on the basis of that, I just kept going forward with that. I decided to be one of the original founders and just say, okay, I believe in this idea. And watch, a lot of people do really hard work and just watch it kind of try to grow.
Yeah, so I want to explain how the app works before we go any farther so that viewers can understand. So you download the app, you enable the notifications, and you get in your car, you start to drive. What happens next?
Well, I guess you just have some different options that you can go to. The mechanics of it were never, I was like raised with wolves in my life. It just feels like, and so electronically, all the applications are not. They kind of just go fly over my head. I came at this with the idea that I'm the guy that driving around America or wherever, but in America specifically, when you see those bronze markers along the way, that I want to stop. I want to read what was there. And it was usually very concisely written, but it's something of history. And I remember being really thrilled by that. Otherwise you just watch the miles click off, if you will, with whoever you're driving cross country with. And usually by the time you get cross country, you want to kill them. But what happens quite often is that these markers really meant something to me, the history that I would see. And the idea was if you could get in your car and you could push an app, if somebody could figure out how to make an app, that would be something that would appeal to me, to understand who the first people who were here, because that was the fundamental for me, to start always with who were the first people, because there's no here without knowing who was there before us.
So, many of your films have really captured pivotal moments in American history. From the early days of expansionism shown in Dances with Wolves to, the assassination of John F. Kennedy and JFK. History seems to be a common thread throughout your career. And so have the parts that you've chosen and the projects that you've chosen to be involved with, have they always involved, or is it important to you that they involve some sort of element of historical storytelling?
Not really. I appreciate those stories, though, so I don't run away from them. Somebody says, "Oh, history," keep me in the Marvel world, keep me in the, cartoon world. No, I'm kind of out of step that way. I mean, that's a place to go to, if you want to make a ton of money. But good story has always been something that's thrilled me. I feel like when I learn something, I only know what I know at this point at my age. I think you could probably say the same for yourself. And whatever you're going to learn is going to come from whatever book you read or from whatever interesting person you talk to. I think when I leave this planet, I'll always be sad about the books I'll never read and the music I'll never hear. And so for me, if I need to expand my life, I have to open my ears. I have to open my eyes. When I'm traveling across the country, my nose doesn't need to be in a computer. It needs to be looking out. And so I get thrilled with the truth. It's not boring to me. In fact, you don't actually even have to change the truth to make it exciting.
We have these stories in American culture that have sort of been immortalized through the years, and that most people know. I think of things like Daniel Boone or Harriet Tubman or George Washington cutting down the cherry tree, which I think is of dubious origins. But so many more stories are simply lost. They're lost to time. They are forgotten through the years. or maybe they're amazing stories, but they never quite make it out of their little neck of the woods. So, is the hope that this app can really preserve and to amplify those types of stories?
I hope so. I continue to pound on them about our history and the first people in these stories. And our story is not always a great one. There's so much violence in America. We're watching violence play out now across the globe. We both know what I'm talking about. But to think that that didn't occur here, it did. There's not a place that you can look at that the country wasn't, that peoples were in conflict over it. And so we're right to look outside ourselves and understand where there's injustices going on. But it happened here, and it's just rich in history. We don't have to be ashamed about it. We can be a little embarrassed, but it's more embarrassing to not know. It can inform our choices as we go forward as people. To understand, it allows us to have empathy. If you really deep down know how ugly things could get, but the app doesn't just stay there in history. Let's be really clear about that. That's my love. That was what I could get behind, and certainly that's a big part of here. And so, I have to have an authentic relationship with anything I do, and so for me to be a founder, I'm not a figurehead. I'm not some kind of thing. I'm not on the head of a car. That's not how I get involved. This is my money. This is my interest. This is my hope for the people that are all a part of here. And the people that I'll never see that maybe come away and say, I heard the coolest story, thank you. Made my trip across the country something. I think we'll expand. We're a startup company, and we have a chance.
Yeah, I think it's important that you pointed out that it's not all about history. I know that the app is designed for road trippers, but I used it in a different way since I'm not present in the US. I downloaded it and I searched around to areas of the country that I wanted to know about, and I clicked on the stories that seemed really interesting. And I actually put the app to the test. I picked some of the more obscure spots that I know well, some very rural places, the little town in Iowa where my grandmother's from, or the little town of 2,000 people in the Oklahoma panhandle that I know well. And to my surprise, the app had stories in both of these locations, plus a couple of others. And they were stories that I did not know. And some of them were about history, but there were also, I saw stories about Janis Joplin, Nashville music scene. So do you know, like, where do all of these stories come from? I understand there's something like 9,000 already in the United States.
Yeah, well, we're in Oklahoma. Where are you talking about?
Oh, so my parents are actually from a town of 2,000 people in the Oklahoma Panhandle that is called Hooker.
Yeah,
So I used to
well,
spend my summers there.
my family's from Guyman, Oklahoma, in the
Yes, that's where my
Panhandle.
parents are born. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so the stories I grew up listening to, they thrilled me. The depression they went, the Dust Bowl, the whole thing. I was thrilled by it. And your question though, go back to your question real quick. I as soon as you kind of jar it for me, I'll know.
Yeah, I was, yeah,
Oh,
that's
9,000
amazing.
9,000 stories. You said something about the
I just
9,000.
wondered, where do you find all of
Well,
the stories that you've included?
we're finding different ways to turn that faucet on. There's people that are coming to, there's something in common about stories, and I bet you know exactly what it is without maybe even able to articulate it. And that is, when you read the best book you've read, you're anxious to tell somebody in the morning, I read the best book. I saw the best movie. I actually heard a joke. When you hear things, what happens is it feels like something you want to share. It's something we all kind of do without even knowing it. You go, and it has to be genuine. It touched you. That's why you would think to stop whatever you're doing to say, I did this, by the way. And I think what happens is the people that are coming to hear, there are so many people that love story. They're starting to be contributors. There's libraries of stories that are starting to come to us that we're being able to tap into. And like anything, the thing you think you're doing starts to become something different sometimes in the evolvement of a business.
You narrate several of the stories. So I wanted to ask you, did you personally choose those stories? And if you did, what was it about those that really resonated with you?
Well, they're kind of overused. We didn't even really know we were going to do that. The ones I've done is when you drop into an area, for instance, here between Malibu and, let's say, San Luis Obispo, maybe most of the country doesn't know, we're talking about the West Coast, north of Los Angeles, south of San Francisco. So, but we kind of try to pick some big areas, and I do an overview. So if you're just dropping in, maybe even if you live here, I kind of talk about the beginning of this place. And obviously I start with the indigenous Americans that were here and their story and what first contact must have looked like. And when that happened, we always know that that story ended up kind of bad, right? This didn't, the same kind of deception that came, cultures that were doing fine just before we ever showed up, had reached some kind of equilibrium. For instance, everybody knows that California, at least Southern California, is not a very water-based community. If it wasn't for the Colorado River or the Owens Valley, Los Angeles would never be. I think we might be the only major city in the world that doesn't have a river of our own. And so when people actually came here before first contact, before the Spaniards who divided up this country, when nobody was looking, between them and the Portuguese, they decided to take all of North America. Basically, when they finally came here, and there were the first written reports of what might be here, they were obviously looking for gold because that's what they were about, how to enrich themselves. There was about 20,000 people that existed between, let's say, Malibu and San Luis Obispo. And why was that? Well, there wasn't that much water, so they did that, and all the waterways were taken up by these people. And you start there, and you realize that was kind of equilibrium for this particular area. You also realize, because let's say it wasn't that ultra rich, right? Wasn't that in resources? It was fine for the people who lived here. They didn't have as much war here as, let's say, other tribes did over the country that had resources that were really coveted. So people that came from another place that had pretty good stuff and came here, and they go, okay, we don't need to fight for this. So in a way, this was also, I'm not saying it wasn't without its own trouble, but it wasn't noted for the warfare like what happened in the middle of America over the gold and every other place as we marched across this country. So, the overviews for me they start with that. And so somebody goes, oh, I had no idea. And I try to take it up to contemporary moments. For instance, here in Santa Barbara, we had the first Earth Day because we had the first great environmental disaster. Not the first one. The first one where the people of the world decided to do something about it, and Earth Day was started. We were right in the middle of the summer of love, people going up to Haight-Ashbury. And so I dip into those stories just a little bit. But the overviews are about how did we drop in, what was here before us, how has this thing evolved? And it's just kind of skin deep. It's not very deep at all, but it seems like people have enjoyed those. They're a little longer than the other stories. They're sometimes 10 or 15 minutes. And that was the reason, and so I did one just thinking I would do one, and then my partners keep trying to make me do more.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that you said that even just local people are also tuning in and finding this interesting, because I think we have a tendency to just get lost in our day-to-day lives and what's happening here and now in the modern, and not knowing about the amazing history behind places and how things came to be where we are today. I just have one more question. So with 9,000 stories across the United States, and I understand more in the pipeline, it seems like the U.S. is really being covered well. But do you have any plans to launch here to any other countries?
I think that we have something that lends itself to that. I think we would like to, and I think that we're refining the model. We're listening to our customers. We're seeing, what they like. And I like to jump off the page, quite honestly, with stuff that I don't care what they like sometimes. In a sense, what I mean by that is, let's try something new. Or the thing that we thought didn't work, they rejected. Maybe we did it wrong. What happens, you can be influenced a lot by your customer, but you can also lose your own sense of original that can become a standard somewhere else. And sometimes you just don't do it right. We may think, oh, well, people's attention span are only 2 minutes. Somebody's arbitrarily said that. I don't believe that for anything. I just don't believe it. I believe that we will hang out as long as something's compelling. And I think that's what our job is to make sure that we entertain, that we're compelling, that we're somehow relevant to what this experience can be about. And it can be silly. It can be trivia. It can be any of that. So that's important too, right? It's all important in some way. But does it pass some kind of bar that you set for yourself that you can't always let a customer determine?
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I certainly hope that it does expand to
And
other places.
don't edit it so that it says, I don't care what people think. I don't want that. I have to do that with my I have to do that with my movies. It's easy to follow a trend. It's much more difficult to try to be original. Trends are the repetition of something popular is a way you make a lot of money. And doing something that's classic that no one's felt like they've ever seen before can live forever.
Yeah, I think that's where the really big impact can be made and the lasting impressions. Kevin Costner, thank you so much for taking the time today. And thank you for making our road trips more entertaining and informational along the way.